All right. Good evening, everyone, and I want to welcome you all here today for our city council meeting. Before we get started, I ask that everyone please stand for the pledge, and Councilwoman Spruill will lead us in prayer. Okay, I want to thank everyone again for being here. It's been a while since I had this many people, and uh, man, just saying the pledge, it was awesome just to hear that echo behind me. Uh, we're gonna go ahead and get started on our agenda. The first item will be to consider approval of minutes of the April 4, 2023 regular session. Council, if we had a chance to review the minutes, we'll open the floor for a motion.
After reviewing the minutes, I'll make a motion we approve the minutes of the April 4th, 2023 regular session meeting as presented.
I second the motion.
We have a motion made by Councilman Dale, second by Councilman Adams. Madam Secretary, please record a vote.
Aye.
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 Motion carries unanimously. We'll now close item 1 on the agenda. At this time, we're gonna move item 8 up to the second item on the agenda as a convenience to the public. And we'll go with 8 as this item. Hold a public hearing and discuss and consider approval of ordinance 2023-4, a request from Jeffrey Turner, applicant owner of the Turner Renee Surratt Estate, for the approval of a zoning change from future development district to a multifamily residential district, and amending the future land use plan map of Mount Pleasant 2050 comprehensive plan for a 33.839 acres second tract described in a deed to Jeffrey E. Turner, recorded in file number 2023-0128, Titus County Official Public Records, being shown graphically on a plat of a survey by MTX Surveying, and being more particularly described as follows: with bearing bases, Texas North Central 4202, NAD 83 grid, Titus County, Texas, City of Mount Pleasant, Texas, and is addressed as 874 Nevels Road, and that's County Road 1605. David?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, members of the City Council, Mr. Thatcher. The subject property, as you can see, is it's a 33.8 acre tract of land. It is located on the southwest corner of Nevels Road and Hartsbluff Road, and the applicant is here this evening based on an application that was submitted to the Texas Department of Housing and Community Affairs, and essentially what that was for a competitive bid that they were looking for affordable rental housing for the property. As you may recall, a resolution was passed by the council in December of last year to support the application and move that forward as criteria for the Texas Department of Housing and Community Affairs. And so it is a competitive bid process. And with that being said, Mr. Steve, I believe Steve Martin is here. Yes, he is. He can probably answer some questions about how that program works and where they get there. So if we go to the concept plan, essentially what the applicant is requesting, should the property be rezoned to the multifamily district, they're looking to take up a 10-acre portion of the 33-acre tract. That'll leave 23 acres that could be remained to be developed otherwise, should the zoning be approved. Essentially what they're looking to do is, let me give you a bird's eye view or conceptual rendering here of what this is. There'll be three three-story buildings, housing 24 apartments in each building. That's a total of 72 units for the 10-acre tract. They have some amenities as well for the area also. When we take a look at the zoning, the current zonings we can see is future development district. We do have some adjacent zoning as well, where you have single-family residential district also that is just south of the subject property. Here's the subject property, currently zoned future development district. Once again, what the applicant is looking to do is to change that to a multi-family residential zoning. What staff does whenever an application comes in for zoning, we have to take a look at the comprehensive plan. Does it meet the city's comprehensive plan? The comprehensive plan being the 2050 Mount Pleasant Comprehensive Plan, which is a vision, as you know, is a vision of what the city should look like in the year 2050. And when we take a look at the comprehensive plan, the future land use plan, this right here is the overall city and kind of a snapshot of what the city should look like by the year 2050. We have 12 different what we call subtypes within here that kind of give a design characteristic of each place type within the comprehensive plan. And so when we take a look at this and how you see some of these develop over these years, the subject property is located right here. Everything, I should say, most properties here north of I-30 are in yellow, which is designated for, it's either already single family or designated for single family zoning. Now, once again, this is not a zoning map. This is a future land use plan map. So it's a guide and it's not zoning. However, when we take a look at the area for where the applicant is intending to change the zoning, we have to take a look at this and see what is this currently designated by the comprehensive plan. It's designated as compact residential, and essentially what that means are single family lots, patio homes. You can have townhomes on there. I'm sorry, not townhomes. You can have duplexes and some other small lot developments such as patio homes and single family lot. The characteristics within this does not allow for a apartment complex. And so when I take a look at this, I have to take a look and see, well, what is the designation that could happen for a multifamily designation through the comprehensive plan? That's going to be a mixed-use center. And a mixed-use center is more along the lines of like what you see over here in this area. You have availability of a primary principal arterial here. You've got the highway. You have availability of being able to drive through and make sure that you have traffic covered here. A mixed-use center essentially is an activity node where you have a whole lot of intensity going on. You have people there. You have commercial as well, general retail. So you have an assortment of uses within the mixed use center. When we take a look back at the property here for compact residential, that does not have that component in there for a higher intensity type of use, and so multifamily is higher intensity use type of use. Now, can you have multifamily adjacent to residential? Yes, you can. There's nothing that says you can't have multifamily adjacent to the residential. However, when we take a look at the comprehensive plan and what the multifamily designation and zoning calls for, it calls for a transition of uses. It calls for the ability to be able to have a comparable setting within that area, and a transition of uses essentially means that you have single family. Your single family is the area that you protect the most. Your single family homes are the area you protect the most. So it is the least intense use. Then you have if you have multifamily there, then the layer next to that should be something along the lines of general retail, commercial, something like that. It acts as a buffer to the single-family protected areas. And so when we go back to the zoning map, when we take a look at this, you have single-family zone south of the subject property. You already have developments up here for, you got the I believe this is Silver Creek here, you have Stonebriar, and you have the Woodlands, which are established subdivisions. These are all single-family homes as well. Although this is an unincorporated area, it's not inside the city limits, this has single-family homes here as well, and you have single-family homes that are adjacent here. So north, south, and east are single-family homes, and of course to the west here as well. The two tracks here adjacent to this is zoned for future development, which future development allows for single-family homes. Essentially what I'm looking at here is there is no transition of uses, and so that's the thing that got to take a look at from a zoning standpoint, and does that make sense for a multifamily? The other issue that I would need to point out is the applicant is looking to use just 10 acres on this, and 23 acres remains. So if it's zoned for multifamily, then you have a higher intensity type of uses that could be on that property should he win the bid. Once again, it's a bid process. So if he wins the bid and the zoning is approved, then you could have multifamily here, but also here could be other higher intense type uses, such as a hospital, such as schools, such as, offices. Things like that could be located within that 23.8 acres that remains. So when we take a look at this from a zoning standpoint, once again, anytime that property is zoned, it is discretionary to the city council. And that's based on, as well as a recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission. The one thing that staff did do as well as part of another portion of zoning is when we send out notices to property owners. I did put a updated petition in front of you. I did receive that today. It may have came in yesterday, but did get that today. And the last page essentially is the addition and 16 additional. So we have 166 signatures on a petition. I do have 44 notices. There's 2 additional notices I received yesterday as well. So a total of 44 notices. But what staff has to take a look at from the notice standpoint, based by state statute, is what we call the 20% rule. The 20% rule means that of the notices that we send out, do 20% of the property owners, if we have a written protest from 20% of the property owners here that are adjacent to this, if that is 20% or more, then what that does from state statute is it requires a supermajority vote of council in order to approve the zoning request. So with that being said, we did, like I said, send this to the Planning and Zoning Commission. I did provide you with a summary from the staff report. In that, I do indicate that that I provided a summary to the Planning and Zoning Commission, and I did recommend to deny that. The Planning and Zoning Commission again listened to that, and they are forwarding a recommendation of denial as well. But once again, with this being a decision for the City Council, it does require a 3/4 majority vote for approval of the zoning change. One other condition that I have in here, should the zoning change be approved, then what that does, the condition would be that staff would make the appropriate change to the future land use map that would indicate a mixed-use center for the subject property. With that, staff is available for any questions, and the applicant's representative, Steve Martin, is here to answer any questions as well.
Mayor, could I just, and council, could I just say, if you look at the land use map, there's one other point I'd want to make, is that you see the single family color there, it's gold all the way up and down. And if we change the zoning, it kind of turns into a spot zone. In other words, which is really illegal, but it may not be illegal on this thing, but it's spot zone. So now you've got multifamily surrounded by single family. It's not a spot zone because you go across the road, it's contiguous with something else over there. But the main thing is it's in the middle, so it doesn't transition like he said. The other thing is if you look down by Point North there toward the freeway, the purple there, that purple, and on the other side of 1402 is purple. That's commercial and retail, is that not right? And so you come down there and all the way to the freeway and then up the side of Point North. That's been zoned commercial for several years. So that zone is by right, they could build it if it's multifamily there. But up here, it needs a zone change. And because it changes the comp plan and kind of complicates and puts it right in the middle, that's why our staff recommends against it. And there's other places, when I point out there's other places that it could go that it works better under the comp plan. Since we just did the comp plan, it makes sense when you look at it. In fact, if you look at it, sometimes you might say, I don't know how that commercial got here or there. But that was done years ago, so you don't take it away from them, but you leave it like it is and then plan the rest of it. So anyway, that's why we recommend against it. And Steve's my friend. I called him and told him we were going to have to do that. But anyway.
So, David, can you tell us what the percentage was? You know, you said it had to be 20% or more. Did you actually have that number, what the total percent was?
I don't have the actual number, but I can kind of illustrate for you here. It's going to be probably well over 50%. Let's see here, go back to so this property right here and this property owner and these three right here, these are three property owners that represent, if you take a look at the 200 buffer, just these three property owners exceed the 20% easily and probably closer to 50%. Plus we have a couple other property owners right above here who would receive the notes who are within the 200-foot range that have also submitted. So that is well over 50%.
Okay. Council, we have any further questions for David or any of the staff? Okay, this is a public hearing. If we had anyone in the public that would like to speak at this time, come on up, sir. Please state your name and address for the record. And you'll have to hold that button down the whole time you talk. All right.
I have. Your Honor, thank you for having me. I did not speak last time.
Can I get your name and address for the record?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's it.
It's Philip Harris, 2708 Stonehead Street, Mount Pleasant, Texas, 75455. I live in Stonebriar. I didn't speak last time, and maybe what I'm about to say doesn't directly impact some of the items on the agenda, but I am a proud resident, and I apologize. My mother-in-law's in the hospital. Normally I'd be up here with a necktie on, and y'all know me, I would be that way. I'm a veteran of the United States Air Force, 6 years active duty. I did 2 tours in South Korea. From there, I went to work for the Texas Department of Public Safety as a state trooper, because growing up in this fine county, I was surrounded by troopers. And either I had to go the right way or the wrong way. So I guess they had a positive impact on my life. I was fortunate enough to promote through the system there at Texas Department of Public Safety and retired as an executive officer, as a captain at headquarters, where I oversaw approximately 3,800 folks in the field of Texas. I say that to say this. My dad was a game warden. He started out, and I'm referencing something that was said at the last meeting, and I'm sure it's in the public notes. seems like cops and school teachers are always brought up as being the most broke people in the world. Well, you're not gonna get rich doing either one of those jobs, I can promise. My dad made $298 a month when he started out, and he raised 3 children. I took home $998 a month as a state trooper. The first place I ever rented was an apartment, and it was pretty. It was like that one that was up there. I spent 24 hours a day answering calls of violence and drugs, stabbings, shootings. I was in more danger in some of those apartment complexes than I was on the highway by myself. I don't know what the draw is to that, but it draws in crime. I don't know why. I'm not a statistician on things like that. I left Mount Pleasant. I'm going to be brief because I am one with the gift of gab. I did run for sheriff last time, and regardless of your politics, I did it because I love the people of this county. That's why. I came back to this county in 2013 after I retired from Texas DPS because I always considered it home. I took every dollar I had in savings, and we bought that house in Stonebriar. We're still paying for that house. Our neighbors are wonderful people. It's a quiet neighborhood. Is it perfect? No. Do we still have these officers that have a chief? I haven't met you yet. But officers are having to respond out there because crime happens. It's a daily thing. God bless them for the job they do. Unfortunately, I'm still commissioned as a Special Texas Ranger through DPS. That's my own fault because I applied and got accepted. So, I guess where I'm going with this is, folks, I don't want to see that change. We got a quiet neighborhood out there where we all take care of each other. I can count on them as much as they can count on me. Your Honor, we've been friends a long time. Y'all, any one of y'all could call me and I'd come to your aid, but I don't doubt that any one of y'all would come to mine too if I needed help. I just want us to do the right thing. I think there are better places out there for these complexes to be built. I don't want to see anybody be homeless. I just think there's better options. Folks, I could talk for an hour. I'm really good at it, unfortunately. But I just want to say thank you for allowing me to get up here, tell you a little bit about me, and tell you that I love these folks behind me, and I know they love me, and I love y'all, and this is my county and my home. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hello, my name's Dwayne Kleinberg. I live at 1202 Silver Oak, Mount Pleasant. And I'd like to start off by saying thank you very much for the Pledge of Allegiance and the prayer. I'm from California. Please don't hold that against me. That is not allowed in California. And thank you. You made my night. I appreciate that. My wife and I moved out here a little over a year ago. We had to get out of California. What you hear about California is a tenth of what's happening out there. And we have seen the low-cost housing come in, and it spreads. And it just spreads, and it brings crime. Like the gentleman that just spoke. Thank you for your service. And you know, I don't begrudge anybody a place to live, but there are better places. We moved out there. It's quiet. It's a beautiful neighborhood. I've got awesome neighbors. And we want to keep it a nice, quiet neighborhood. It's family, kids able to ride bikes on the street, families, barbecues, practice, we want to keep it that way, if at all possible. And I want to thank you guys all again for listening to me, and thank you for the prayer and the collective allegiance.
Thank you, sir. Okay, do we have anyone else?
My name's Butch Elrod, 1204 Silver Maple Street, Mount Pleasant. Majority of you guys know me. I agree with the gentleman that was just up here and the other gentleman. I did not buy my house out in Silver Creek to have my property values go in the toilet and for crime to go up. We have a nice neighborhood, and bringing in a multi-apartment complex, even though they say it's 10 acres, it'll end up being 30 acres before it's all said and done. Then what do we have? Everything that we bought out in these neighborhoods before it was annexed, and then after it was annexed, is gone. Then when we go to sell, we're not gonna get the money out of our houses that we had planned on when we retire. Correct. So, please don't let this happen. Because if it was somebody if they were putting it over by the country club, this is half of the people that would be in here right now. Okay? We're just as important as that country club. Traffic right now on 1402 and 1605, because the school is expanding, is horrible. You put an apartment complex in out there, we're not gonna be able to get to and from work because we're gonna be sitting at stop signs and stoplights all day. So please don't let this happen. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm David Philibrown, 2729 Sleepy Hollow. And I appreciate the opportunity to address this council, Mr. Mayor. I'm pretty committed to do what I can to see that this zoning change does not take place. Before last Tuesday's meeting, I knew that the zoning was for all 33 acres, but I didn't realize the apartments were only going to take up 10 of that, 72 units. I was adamantly against that. If I add the 23 acres and say we should put another 144 there, I'm really thinking it should be a terrible detriment. The other things that really haven't been mentioned other than the sentiment that's here behind me, and these people showed up here to voice their opinion. I don't know if you want to hear all of us, but I don't think the roads are safe enough. We certainly don't have turn lanes. We don't have enough opportunities for people to pull over side roads or anything else. If we're going to have people coming in and out of that 172 units, we might I don't know if we're going to have 150 cars or 130 cars or what, but there'll be a lot. And I'm like everybody else. I certainly have no problem with this type of housing. I just think that it's not in the right place. We don't have the accommodation for it. I don't think this group here wants this to be a transition zone. It's not one of the things that we moved out there for. I was out there before we got annexed. I'm in the Woodlands, and there's Mr. and Mrs. French have been there. I don't know if you're going to speak or not, but they've been there adjoining directly to this property for 40 years, and 41, excuse me. But there's a lot of emotion about this, and I think that the people that were good enough to show up here and express that, I hope help direct you all to the right to the right decision on this. Do you have any questions for me? I've got 166 signatures on that petition, and I didn't go. I think I knocked on virtually every door in Stonebriar and Spring Creek. Didn't spread out too much from there, but I didn't get but 2 people that wouldn't sign the petition. So the sentiment is strong towards stopping this zone change. Thank you.
Thank you. Excuse me, ma'am. You would have to hold that button the entire
The
time.
center one, okay. My name is Carolyn Baker Little. I'm 79 years old. My husband is 80. We moved to this area. My late husband passed away. I was in Pittsburgh. I moved to Mount Pleasant on Stone Hedge Street. I moved there because I felt it was safe for me in case I were alone at night. A apartment complex with low rent is not something I feel safe in, and I plan to live there as long as I don't have to go to a nursing home. But I recommend that we decline this. I think you would take the integrity away of our homes, you decrease the property value, and it make me stay awake at night and not sleep easily. Thank you, I appreciate it.
Okay, do we have anyone at this time?
I'll go ahead. I'm gonna take just a second of y'all's time, since it's a public hearing. I'll go ahead and say, I've talked to several of you about this issue and, of changing the zoning. Ed mentioned that as you get closer to the interstate, there's some commercial that this would fit on. And someone mentioned the country club. If you come closer to the country club and you actually go between the dollar store and the apartments, and then there's an empty lot, and then there's storage buildings. If it were there, I absolutely would not have a problem with it, because that's right next to an already existing apartment complex. For the area that we're talking about, I would have to say that multifamily is not what I would choose to put there. I would, if it were high-end townhomes or something of that nature where there were individual families in each section, it would be a little different. But for multifamily, 3-tiered apartment complex, I just don't think this is good. All of y'all are welcome to speak, but as soon as y'all get finished speaking, I'm willing to make a motion as soon as the mayor will open it up.
Sir, did you wanna?
I won't take long because of what he just said. Mike Light, 2706 Silver Creek Trail, Mount Pleasant, Texas. Same concerns that have been voiced, in addition to traffic concerns, noise pollution concerns, regardless of what is there. We've lived in this neighborhood for almost 20 years, moved there to live in a neighborhood not close to multifamily. So I respectfully request that this is not allowed. Foot traffic is a concern. Car traffic's a concern. Strain on fire, strain on our police department, who does do an awesome job. So we just appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you. All right, do we have anyone else? You look anxious. Did you want to say something? All right. Okay. Well, I'll say that the council has definitely heard your concerns, and we value the recommendations of our planning and zoning. And at this time, if anyone else, did you have something? After that, well, go ahead and open up for a motion after you.
Let me just say that I appreciate each one of you being here tonight, and I appreciate your emails that we received, phone calls, personal visits. You know, this is, I know 90% of you by first name in the room tonight, and as I went around, a couple of me, Tim, are you running now? And I said, no, I'm running from something. So, but no, we appreciate you being here tonight, and this speaks volumes for our whole community. And I'm with a fellow council member and hopefully the rest of them that this is not the right place for this type of development in no way, shape, form, or fashion, as far as I'm concerned. And it hadn't been, and I've told a lot of you that, and as we've discussed it over the last few weeks. But just wanted to let you know we do appreciate you being here tonight, and any time this is what we're here for. We're your representatives, okay?
I also want to just take this time to thank each and every one of you as well. A majority of you have also reached out to myself. But the one thing that I've really learned about this whole process is I've enjoyed the engagement that y'all put forth in this. The effort that you've come, you know, I don't know if you've reached out to every one of us, but just to reach out to me, I've gotten, like other council members said, I've gotten personal face-to-face visits, texts, phone calls, emails, and just to see the engagement from the community of how you showing your concern for what's happening in our city and our community is, it's great to see that. I'm glad to see your concern, and I take it very strongly. And again, appreciate every one of y'all being here tonight.
All right.
You can't let the woman go without speaking. Thank each of you again. I even want to thank the citizens that made the petition to and ask that this is part of the process. Someone, an individual or a company, can make a request for changes, and we certainly need to look at those on an individual basis. But this, as a follow-up, is part of that process to give our citizens, the community, a chance to weigh in with, for or against an item. So it is important. I've been serving here for almost 4 years in this seat right here, and I'm encouraged to see the response when people have an issue. A lot of times they don't get involved enough. So as a community, not just for this issue tonight, please stay engaged and help us to know you may have some ideas and concerns that we maybe haven't thought about. So it's extremely important. Thank you for taking your time to come and participate tonight and help all of us hear the issues. So when we vote here in just a minute, we'll have more information and know the heartbeat and the pulse of the community. Thank you.
I'll just piggyback on what Councilwoman Spruill stated. It is very important that you stay engaged, and the more that the community comes and set in on these meetings, the more we get out of what we get a bigger feel for what the community needs and wants. So it's important to stay engaged, and I want to say thank you to each one of you for showing up, because it really helps us when it comes time to make the decision. Before I move on for a motion, Mr. Steve, would you like to come up and speak with us, please?
I'm sure, Steve, they'll give you an applause just like they did everybody else.
I mean, I recognize I'm the only one in the room standing for this project, so I understand that. And, but I would tell you some things about this process so that everyone knows, and I appreciate everyone that comes out, just as y'all do, for being a part of the community. That's what we are here. What this TDHCA thing, though, is a competitive program. So we compete with all of Region 4, which goes just almost down to Tyler, back up to Longview Marshall, across to Texarkana, back to Paris, back to Sulphur Springs, and us in the middle. That's Region 4. So every session that one of these comes up, which is every year, you have to compete with everybody in your region for that. Right now, there are 3 that are still standing in Region 4. There's 1 in Marshall, and there's 2 here in Mount Pleasant. The other one in Mount Pleasant is right down the road from it. I don't know if you can bring that map back up, but It's right beside the clinic. It's on the 5 acres. It's already zoned commercial. As a matter of fact, it is a property that we looked at 3 years ago. But at the time, Ricky wasn't looking to sell it, and so we just moved on to a different property. You have to do that every year. They change the rules every year. The competitiveness of it is the same, but they change the areas that they're looking for. Right now, everything north of I-30 is in the zone that scores the highest points for our region. The only other place in Mount Pleasant that scores higher than that is where my housing authority is. It scores higher than anything, and it always has. That's why it's there. But these points are what drives it. Some people have asked why we choose that location. Well, we have to choose a location that's in the area that gets us points. We don't know what the zone is a lot of times because we're doing this well ahead of things that the council is doing and the city's doing. Y'all's not zoning, but the plan didn't get released until June. We already had a spot in mind well before that. So, it's not something we could have said, okay, we can do something different. It's already in process. So the one thing that came up last week, and I don't want to share this with everybody, it doesn't change anybody's mind, I'm sure, but I would say this, just so you're aware that we looked at it as well, trying to make any kind of accommodation or means of making the community more happy with what we do and what we're proposing. Well, we have the ability to go back to TDHCA with our request and amend the area just to the 10 acres, which would eliminate any concerns of other housing or other types of businesses of whatever coming into that, what you want to call your transitional zone. I'm speaking in the wind. I know it doesn't change anybody's mind, but just so you know, we did look at that. We wanted to make sure that if there was something we could do that would help, we would do that. The other project has a pretty good chance of making. Unfortunately, it will go right on 1402, just as this one would have. So it's going to have a lot of the same issues that this one would have with traffic and your other issues that you might have in result of that. And I just want to say one other thing, because I'm proud of what we do here in Mount Pleasant. Those of you that are aware of where I'm at, what I do, our crime rate is not high. I want y'all to understand that. I can't say what a new project would do any more than any of you sitting here could do, but ours is not high. I almost wish it was high. 2 years I have tried to get an emergency solution grant in order for us to put cameras in our place so that we could do that. We don't have enough crime. And it boils down to that. When we went to the chief to get our numbers, and I'm sorry, it was the previous chief, not our current chief, but he gave me the numbers, and our crime rate in my housing authority is lower than most of the rest of the city. Okay, so now that's not to say this project would be just like that or not. It's going to be under the same management. So I can tell you that's what we do, is try to make a safe environment for all people and the folks that we serve at the housing authority. And I'll end with this unless somebody has questions, but the folks we serve at the housing authority are what is called extremely low income. Those are folks that are your single females for the most part, but about 75% of our housed people there are single females over retirement age, making about $700 a month. That's what they have to live on. And that's what we have there predominantly. We have some families as well. We have some disabled folks, but the biggest part of our folks there are retired people. So the other steps up on that from extremely low income is very low income, which is the next level. And then there's low income, which is what the proposed development would be, is low income. And those are folks that make almost the median income here in Titus County. The median income is $58,000 and some change. You could make up to $46,800 and still living in this complex. So that's what we propose. We're not trying to step on anybody's toes or make anybody, feel bad. I don't know if you got your appraisal values yet. If we do bring your appraisal value down, it might be a good thing. I don't know. I got mine and it went up 20-something%. So, but anyway, that's in jest. I know it's serious business to everyone, and it's serious to us too. We've been working on this for 8 years, and we'll continue working on it. The city council has given us backing every time we've come to you for support on getting a submission in. You know, if things had been a little different, we could have looked for a little different spot. The timing of things didn't let us be aware of what was going to be happening in that zone, so we couldn't have done anything different. But we will certainly keep that in mind going forward on future projects, and we'll still be here. And I hope one makes in Mount Pleasant eventually. The very last thing, and I promise I'll sit down, are 700 people are on my wait list right now. I know we got 166 some names that are against this going there, but I have 700 people waiting for housing here in Mount Pleasant. That's a lot, you know, and I recognize you've got a lot of people sitting in front of y'all tonight that you've got to make a decision for, but you got 700 people waiting on housing here in Mount Pleasant too, that we got to find a way to make that happen. I've talked with the city planner last week. We'll work very closely in getting the next site that we choose to hopefully be a better location for everybody. Maybe it'll be by the country club. I don't know, but we'll see. All right, but I appreciate y'all's time tonight and everybody else coming out tonight. Is there any questions? I'm happy to stay and answer those.
I just want to say thank you for what you do. You actually do a good job of managing these properties. And once again, the project that's closer to the interstate, I've told several people that called me, I couldn't deny that at all, because I just think that's a better position, a better place. But thank you so much, because you do a good job. You do it like it should be done. So thank you.
All right, thanks again, Steve. We appreciate you and all the hard work that you do. At this time, we have no further questions. I'm going to open the floor for a motion on this item. I got to close. Did you have something? Yeah, that's what I'm. Before I open the floor for a motion, I am going to close the public hearing if we have no one else that want to speak at this time. All right, consider the public hearing at this time closed. Floor is open for a motion.
I'll make a motion that we decline this request from the, concerning the, ordinance 2023-4 for the request from the Jeffrey Turner applicant, owner of the Turner Renee Surratt estate, for the approval of this zoning change from FD to multifamily. Again, I make a motion that we decline this request.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion made by Councilman Dale, second by Councilman Chappelle. Madam Secretary, record a vote, please.
Aye.
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 Vote is unanimous. And at this time, this item is closed on our agenda.
Thank y'all for being here tonight.
All right. All righty. Well, we'll wait. Okay, let's get back to business. We've now closed that item, and we're gonna move on at this time to our next agenda item, which is to consider approval of industrial pretreatment assistance and general service agreement with Plummer Associates Incorporated. Ed?
Yeah, Mayor and City Council, we're actually on item 2, it's the workshop. I have, Dave, Dave Howerton here, and I'm gonna say your name in a minute. Sorry, Varner, Lindsay Varner, yeah, with Plummer Engineering, and they're going to talk about the pre-treatment program, wastewater program, and then on 3 we have to consider the the general services agreement. So, David,
Yeah.
you got to push that button down, hold it.
Yeah, I had mashed it down. It is item 2 workshop. I did make that mistake because we had it marked out. All right, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mayor and Council and Ed, for the introduction. My name is David Howerton. I live at 1640 West Woodard in Denison, Texas, and I'm with Plummer Engineering. And Lindsay Varner is the project manager that'll be working on the job. I'm in business development. I'd like to take a little time and talk about pre-treatment and the benefits of it, the purpose of it. But a couple of things to start with, I would just say the type of input that a pre-treatment program affords you is a technical and a quantitative perspective on the infrastructure that you have to work with as you work with prospective client industries. And it's different from the public input that you just got. It's a process that you have to go through to decide about the projects that you want to come here. And before I start with these slides, I want to make sure that everyone understands, I'm not against industrial development. I'm not here to say don't do it. I'm here to say go through a process, do your due diligence, do your homework, and figure out the best industries that fit all the demands, all the needs of the community, and make your decision and go forward as a community. So I'll bore you a little bit with pre-treatment, and then we'll talk at the end. I'm gonna give you some examples about how we would help work through the process. What we're gonna do now is talk about the contract, the services that we're gonna provide to help the city get the program up and started. So with that, I'll move to the slides if I can figure this out. Tonight I want to talk to you about why have an industrial pretreatment program, what does it do for, what does Mount Pleasant need, what is the status of the current industrial activities of the city, the actions that are needed now. I want to talk to you about the wastewater plant capacity, and then I want to give an example of how you would make a decision about industrial growth. One of the reasons you have a pretreatment program, obviously, is to protect the infrastructure that you have. You have an investment over time in the treatment plant and the collection system. Obviously, we want to protect the environment. The city needs to put policies and procedures in place in order to conduct the program. Industries there's federal standards that have been in place since the 1980s, is whenever pretreatment programs were really kicked off. And the federal standards this is just 2 of the volumes of the information that a pretreatment program operates by from the federal statutes, and they've been around since the 80s. What I would say about Mount Pleasant, I want to finish with my last point on this slide.
An effective program creates a trusted partnership with industry. And I've seen it work plenty of times. And the same feeling, the good feelings that you had just here a few minutes ago with your citizens about the public input for a project, you can have that same feelings with your industries, and your industry should have those same feelings with you if you conduct a program that's upfront, it's transparent, it's fair for everybody. What I know about Mount Pleasant and about the plant that was here in the 80s with Bo Pilgrim, I was in Austin and Dallas, and we used to know about the Bo Pilgrim commercials all over Texas. And the decisions that were made at that time kept Mount Pleasant from having an approved pretreatment program at that time because of the size of the plant. So you're now 3 to 4 decades, 30 plus years behind where you would have been had you kept that plant because of its potential impact on your infrastructure. So what you're doing now, you're in a tween zone, you're in the segue into an approved program as Mount Pleasant continues to grow. What does the city of Mount Pleasant need? It needs a functioning program, and I want to read this. You need ordinances, policies, and enforcement tools to establish generally and technically based limits for wastewater strengths and their characteristics, and you have to look at it from a legal standpoint, and you have to look at a fair playing field for everybody, connect to and have service with the collection system and the wastewater plant. When I say legally, you start involving TCEQ and US EPA. In the documents I just showed you, they started working on those in the 80s. There's certain industries that are defined in the federal regulations by what they do. They have rules that are in place for the industries that they are, whether or not they're connected to a city or whether they're out in Timbuktu, just discharging to a creek. I mean, if they've got their own discharge permit, there's certain industries that have requirements that are self-reporting back to EPA or to a state regulatory agency just because of the widgets that they make, okay? I don't know if there's any of those industries in Mount Pleasant right now. We've done some preliminary checking, but if you have any of those federally regulated industries connected to your system right now, that necessitates that the city should have a federal program already. So that's got to be determined. If those industries were self-reporting, then they should have reported to the city as well. So I don't know that, but it's something that's got to be looked at. You've got to do an evaluation of your existing system and see what might be here legally bound to already be part of an approved program. To be fair, that I'll tell you, when it works wonderfully. Everyone recognizes that stronger waste, stronger than domestic waste, it costs more to treat those. They should be charged more. Municipal controls through the ordinances, through enforcement, through monitoring, those are needed to check industries as to what they're actually discharging and verify. You trust and you verify by sampling. You do the monitoring. Fairer rates should be established for higher strength waste. One way you address that is if you identify what's, and I'll get to that in a minute, is a fair value for domestic waste, which is residential and commercial, and anything above that you identify a surcharge and you apply that to wastes that are stronger, because you're helping whoever that discharger is, whether it's an industry or whether it's it could be some other commercial activity that could have a really strong waste, and you need to charge them because they're going above and beyond. They're taking advantage of the city's system to treat their waste. All actions and rules must be applied fairly, and if everybody knows it's a fair playing ground and ever being treated fairly, then it just works better. So what is the status of the city's current program? It's, as I said earlier, there is a Chapter 51 ordinance, the sewer ordinance, but it's out of date. It's many years old. I think the last entry I saw was 1987. There's no current program in place. There's no current permitted industries at all. It's time to set up a program. There is some regulatory flexibility, and I'll explain that to you in just a minute. You're in a good place for getting things started, and from the conversations we've had, we know that there's industries that are trying to come here now. Actions that are needed now, it's time to hire a staff, somebody that you can tell to go read those books and read all the regulations that TCEQ has. There's websites that are available. You can't just put this all on one person. You've got to have at least an assistant to start with, but somebody that can fill in for the second person. I mentioned training, and I'm going to say training, and I'm going to say training again because it's so important. It's such a defined industry. There's each year EPA Region 6 has an annual conference, and the 5 or 6 states in Region 6, they all congregate. This year the meeting's in Denton in August, and I encourage, we're recommending a schedule of hiring somebody as quick as we can get that can be accomplished, and have them at that conference in August is what our suggestion would be. 2 or more employees, you need to modify and update the ordinances. We need to set up the program in a modified fashion for this area that you are between, not having to have an approved program, fully formal, fully functional with the regulatory agencies. Right now, there's some flexibility. The council needs to make some policy decisions. I don't know what all those are right now, but as we work through the process, there will be some decisions that Ed will make recommendations through our assistance, and the council will have to make some decisions about policy, and then the staff can go out and work with those policies. And then whenever a client comes here, people will be in behind the scenes working on the answers to the unknowns, trying to decide if someone is a good prospect or if someone is not.
You mentioned that earlier that if we have an industry already that meets a certain criteria, then we may be required to have a full-fledged program. We won't be in the in-between, but we'll have to do a full pre-treatment program.
The response to that will come from a survey of the existing industries. If they don't know, then they may not, that they have a categorically regulated process. It might be that they would be given a certain amount of time to either apply for their own permitting. They could discontinue that process. They could move it to another facility. So I don't want to wade off into that pool yet, but it is a reality.
Just wanted to point out that once we get over 5 million gallons a day, then we have to go into the full-fledged program. But if there's an industry, either here now or that we bring in that meets the categorical level, then we're also required to go into the full-fledged program.
That would be, unless there was some caveat that TCEQ said you could still delay. But just as the simplest reading of the regulations, yes, that's correct. So one thing that some people know and we talk about, there's a difference between how you impact a plant. There's wastewater strength and there's wastewater load. Wastewater strength, people hear about BOD and TSS, that's biochemical oxygen demand, total suspended solids. That's the waste strength, and you can measure it. It's a chemistry. You take a sample and you know something about that waste, but you don't know its impact unless you add the hydraulic impact, which is the flow. So you multiply the flow and the strength together to come up with a waste load. There's no way for anyone to control an industry based on waste strength alone. You just can't do it. Unless you had real-time monitoring 24/7 on their part, for them to have an opportunity to make sure their waste is good, and then for you to watch it real-time, 24/7, all the time, you just can't do that. And so what you do is you permit based on load. You permit based on how much water they expect to use in their process, either with existing data sampling that's collected, you find out what their strength is, and then you calculate a load, and this is for existing industries, and then you would, either you have the information from prospective industries to do the same kind of load calculations, but you have to come up with a load to figure out how much total capacity they're going to take from your plant. Yes, there's a hydraulic component, but you have to know the waste strength, and you multiply those together and then look at what you have available. This is another way to express that. The line in the middle is 250 milligrams per liter waste strength of BOD or TSS. Everything below that is typically, almost without a doubt, is domestic, or it's very likely a pre-treated industrial discharge. The older the systems are, the lower that goes down. I mean, there's some cities that'll have 150 milligrams per liter day in and day out in their wastewater because of the infiltration and inflow. They have leaks. They have groundwater that leaks into their system, or stormwater that gets in there, and it dilutes the waste. Anything above 250, just almost 99% of the time, is going to be an industrial waste. It can be a restaurant or something with a low flow, but if you have a low flow and a higher strength waste, that's not an issue. It's the combination of the higher flow and the higher waste at the same time. This is where I think this will tell the story, so I'll try to use the pointer here. Since 1940, I looked at the population data. Mount Pleasant has been growing at an average of 150 people per year for 80 years. I mean, every 10 years, it's 1,500 census. And so you have this graph, and this is not exact. This is my representation of it. This point right here is pretty accurate to 2023. And what on the axis, you have waste loading, which is what's permitted, and this is over time. This is where we are right now. This is 2.9 million gallons per day at the wastewater treatment plant. And if you multiply that times 250 milligrams per liter, which is the design value for the wastewater plant, you get 6,000 pounds a day. In 2024, when the construction is complete of the 5 million gallon per day plant, you will then have a capacity of 10,425 pounds per day of BOD and TSS. So I think the plant's been in place for 30 years. Even after 30 years, you're still at just a little more than half of your capacity of what's available. What recently happened was the plant was down rated from 2.9 million gallons a day to 2.1 by TCEQ, according to the receiving stream. So the city, in effect, had an unfunded mandate, and they lost capacity because they required a stricter effluent set, a stricter performance from the wastewater treatment plant. So when the plant was redesigned, it was redesigned for the new effluent discharge limitations at 5 million gallons per day. So if we just keep tracking along here and getting about 150 people per year, this is a little small, but that's 25 pounds per person per year that's added, then it's still going to be almost a flat curve. What we don't know is what's going to happen in the future. If anybody knows that, I'll sit down and they can tell me. All the projections for Texas are that it's going to double by 2060. And we're over 30 million now, and we're supposed to be to 60 million in about 30 more years. It's asymptotic growth. Even what I've shown here is a straight line. But if that curve turns up because of just growth, population growth alone, you've got 20 years out here of debt into the early 2040s that you'll still be paying on, that you're trying to make that capacity that you've added, that extra 4,000 pounds per day, you're trying to stretch that out. So let's do a hypothetical example. Let's say that you have a small and a medium and a large industry prospects come to you, and this is all hypothetical, but we'll say a small industry is 35,000 gallons per day at 5 milligrams per liter waste strength, BOD or TSS. A medium would be 150,000 gallons per day. I just randomly picked 700 milligrams per liter, a little higher strength waste. That's almost 900 pounds per day. And then for a large industry, that's a lot of water, 500,000 gallons per day at 500 milligrams per liter is 2,000 pounds. Let's see how that comes out on your chart. Given a straight line growth of population, this is the lower hatched area is your smaller industry. The middle cross-hatched area is your medium industry. And then this upper one is your large industry, 2,000 pounds per day. That's 20% of your total capacity. And if they show, I gave these 2024 dates, 2025 and 2026. That would be already at 60% of your total capacity in 2 years if you get industries here in the next 2 years with that kind of impact, and they say, we want to be your partner. It's your choice to make that decision. If everything that you put into that decision says yes, do it. But what I want to say is that there's instead of the unknowns, by going through a process, you can remove the unknowns, and you have a technical basis to support staff, whether it's on staff, whether it's engineering that supports staff, such as we would offer. And then Ed gets answers from us. He asks questions. He asks whoever he hires, and they give answers. And then Ed goes to meetings with Nathan and others, IDC. He meets with council, and then there's a joint decision made. But this is my purpose today, was to quantitatively show you what you're doing as some of these prospects come to town. I don't know that I need to say any more. I'll take questions at this time.
Dave, question in your illustration there for the different industries. Are you so for example, in the small industry there, are you representing one business or just industry as a whole? Like that would be how many different businesses within that small industry example?
Those are just individual companies. That's 3 companies.
Do we have any more questions?
So the process that we're in, and I'm not even sure who I'm asking the question to, but the process that we're in to renovate our current system that we have now, I mean, is that something we need to look at? Do we need to upgrade now? Is it something that we upgrade what we've already approved and we look at where we go in the future? I mean, I just want to make sure we're spending the money in the right spot.
Yeah, we talked about that earlier today. We've talked about that a week or so ago. It came up about we could get a permit up to 6 million gallons in the stream that we discharge to. But at 5 million gallons, Dave can explain this more. That's the limit where you have to do a full-fledged permitting system. And so as long as we're under that, it gives us that, as David said, that in-between where we can implement something and not have to be to a full-fledged, all the paperwork reporting, so that by the time we get it in and running and comfortable with it, and then we get to that 5 million, or we find we have an industry that is a categorical, that makes us go to the full-fledged, it gives us some time to get there. Dave, you may want to comment on.
The federal regs that I mentioned, they say 5.0 MGD, which is exactly what the new plant is permitted for. So if it had been 5.1 or 5.2, you would have already been down that road. So that you're in a very good flexible position right now. I do want to say one more thing, because since I've only spoken about BOD and TSS as it relates to these industries, I'd spend the rest of the evening reading lists of chemicals that could potentially harm the wastewater plant. I heard a new one yesterday that I'd never heard before called QACs. It's a quaternary ammonium compounds. It's bad enough in one city that they have now identified that as a technically based local limit that they're putting in their ordinance, that people have to sample for QACs. And so you say, what's a QAC? Well, you can Google it like I did. It's a release agent for cleaning, I think it's food processing, but it could be semiconductor type equipment during a cleaning process. There's so much of it that's getting away that it does a great job, I'm sure, cleaning the machines inside the industries, but once it gets to the wastewater plant, it's inhibiting the biological processes. So at some point, it's easy to look at the conventional pollutants. When you get to a full-fledged, fully developed, approved program, you go through a very detailed sampling and analysis of pollutants to determine what's already here. If there's nothing here that's a problem, then you end up with about 15 or 16 that EPA wants everybody to look at anyway. It's just some known ones that are problems: aluminum, cadmium, zinc, all the things that you would normally think of. You'll have technically based local limits for those because EPA Region 6 requires it. I forget the exact number, but it's something like that. It's more than a dozen. But when you do that initial sampling, if you find anything in your waste stream that's already present, it's potentially going to be something that would have to be regulated in your system because people are putting it in your system. There's things that come from groundwater when people have wells. There's things that come from well water that has to be regulated because of it's naturally occurring sometimes, and it ends up on a technically based local limit, but nobody's discharging it. It's coming out of the groundwater. These industries that come that don't have just BOD and TSS, they have other inhibiting chemicals. That's something else that has to be looked at. So the first thing you do is you give them a questionnaire, and they fill out about 20 pages about what they're going to be doing, and then they hand that back to staff, and staff starts working through that process, and ultimately that leads towards a decision of whether or not they have to have pretreatment either for fat, oils, and grease at the plant, or some of the metals and special chemicals that just can't be released to the wastewater plant. So we're very thankful for this opportunity, and we'll be look forward to continuing to work with the city. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Yeah, at this time, we'll go ahead and close that item, which is item 2, and we'll now go to the original item 3 on the agenda, which was to consider approval of industrial pretreatment assistance and general service agreement with Plummer Associates, INC.
If in your packet you have the handout which is an introductory letter and then the contract, if you would look at your place, you have another one that was placed there. That's an updated one. So the one in your packet's not the updated one, and this one is.
Ed, would you hit the high notes for us here as to what this is gonna, what this will ultimately cost to have plumber, people help us with their part, and then what we're looking at when we add staff, just rough numbers on that, and then, just a few, if you don't mind, if you can address that a little bit, I'd appreciate it.
This contract covers everything that Dave was talking about. We develop surveys or go find out what we have. We would work with the new industry coming in, and to set up a program. They would work on an hourly basis depending on who's doing the work. And but this contract is not to exceed $100,000. So they'll do the plan up to that amount, and if we need to come back and redo it, we'd come back for more. But it allows them to spend up to $100,000 doing this program. I think we're looking at, did you put a timetable in there, Lindsay? Is it a year, or Dave, or it's just whatever it takes? And then we'll probably hire a couple of people, and that's probably gonna be something like somewhere between 125 and 150,000 probably. We don't know. We'll have to look and see what that is. Is that too high, you think, for two? And then we have to do the training. This program will come by, I assume we do a rate study, put this in the thing, and the cost would be borne by the industry that we're pre-treating. So it'll be in the wastewater fees. We currently are pretty low on our wastewater fees anyway. We went up a little bit, but we're pretty low statewide. And so, in most cities that have any industry, I would say all in cities that have industry have some kind of a pre-treatment. They know what their industries are giving them and what it is. So this would be built into fees that we would probably look at and do, and maybe put in place at budget time, Laurie, or you may want to put it in sooner depending on what the costs are, but we would start this right away so that we can get it in place as soon as we can, and get people to this training school in August, kind of thing. So that's pretty much it. But it would be a system paid for by the utility system that is charged back to the industry.
And your company will also be helping us in getting an ordinance in place?
That's what the 100,000 will help do, yes. You know, Jim Matthews, he's the water authority. We announced it, we've been using, so yeah.
What, on the training, I'm assuming it's in-person training, and if so, how long is the training? Or hands-on, that type of training?
That really should be as needed as well, because there's a lot of training on the EPA website and the TCEQ website as well. So we would encourage the new folks, especially if you hired somebody experienced, they may already be familiar with that, and you may already be down the road, already on the learning curve with respect to that. We'll provide whatever's needed beyond that. And what I would say is that we don't know how much we'll just provide however much is asked for.
With that training, is there any type of certification that comes with that as well, or is it just training?
I'm not sure. A lot of the pre-treatment people, there's some TCEQ courses to take on wastewater. You may hire somebody, you may find somebody that's interested in this program that's already has a wastewater license. So, but there's several industrial courses for them to take, but don't know that they're specifically industrial registration.
One thing that Dave pointed out when we were asking him the same questions a week ago, and he said that you don't necessarily, you could maybe find somebody that's working for us in the wastewater treatment or water treatment that's got a certification or a license. But he says that really what you want is a chemist or a science teacher, a chemist that can understand the whole concept of it, and at the same time be a people person. So I don't know how you do that, but anyway.
It's very important to have soft skills and the technical skills, because this person is going to deal a whole lot with black and white regulations, and then there's some gray in these programs as they're administered, and there's policy areas, and this person doesn't need to be from the FBI and carry a pistol. I always said if they ever handed me a pistol when I worked for a city before, that I was going to quit, because that's not what I signed up for. But I will tell you that there's some special skills, and when you go to an industry and you say, I don't have any options, these are the rules, and especially when they're in the federal regulations, that's just a communication.
And so obviously, this is be $100,000 for you guys, and then whatever legal fees we have with their input to help us with the ordinance will be an additional fee from us to pay for the legal side of it as well. You're the more the technical input.
Yes, ma'am, and we don't want to spend any more money than what's needed. We're not looking to bank that. We're looking to help the program, and all we'll do is spend what time we're asked to help.
So it may come in under 100 is what you're saying.
And my understanding today was y'all work with a lot of cities all around us, all over the state of Texas. You're very involved in this on a day-to-day basis.
Yes, we have, Councilman Chappelle, we do have training that's available. We'll do slide presentations by video. We have several offices. One of our fellows that knows the most about this is in Louisiana, and he can be on a virtual meeting and do slideshows and answer questions without us having to show up on site.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Okay, council, do we have any other comments or anything about this item? Okay, we'll go ahead and open the floor for a motion on this item.
I make a motion that we approve industrial pretreatment assistance and general service agreement with Plummer Associates Incorporated.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion made by Councilman Chappelle, second by Councilman Dale. Madam Secretary, record a vote, please.
Aye.
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 Motion is unanimous. We'll now close that item on the agenda. Our next item, yes, thank you all. Next item will be March financial. Ms. Lori?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is a very similar presentation to what you saw last week, or last month, I should say. We're looking at our general fund, our debt service fund, and our utility fund. Revenue streams are strong. We're projecting that most come in at budget or above. We have sales and liquor tax, which actually looks like it'll come in about $100,000 over budget. Property taxes look like they'll come in at budget. Contract income and landfill fees look like they'll make budget. Some good news on the landfill fees. We were lagging a little behind when I put the reports in the packet for this month, but we received four payments from them yesterday, so we're over $500,000 for the year. Court fines and fees, other user fees, permits and fees, and interest income all look strong compared to budget. Interest income is definitely going to beat budget just because of the interest rates. The general fund expenditures, I divided this between salaries and benefits, which is about 75% of our total budget, and then operating expenditures. Both are hovering around that 54% of total budget. So we look good there. On the debt service fund, this is a very straightforward fund. We collect property taxes to repay governmental debt that we've issued for projects such as streets and parks and those type of things. And even though our actual debt service expense looks low, that's just a timing issue. In May, we'll be making several of our debt service payments. On the utility fund revenue, water sales are strong. This does not include the increase that we adopted for TriSud. That was not effective until April 1st, so we should see that next month. Oops, sorry. And then on the utility fund side, expenses are, right where we would expect them. Debt service is a little higher, but that's because we just made a $1.185 million payment on a bond. So if y'all have any questions, I'd be glad to try to answer them.
On the landfill, is that normal for them to pay us like that, or is that just kind of I don't remember that in the past?
I don't think it is. It just looks like we didn't get any payments in March. And so we received a February overage payment and then our March payments and then an April payment. So I would expect them to get it caught back up.
So that actually puts us 500,000 over?
For the midway point, we're at like 530,000, I think. So we look good compared to budget because we budgeted $1 million.
Okay, council, we have any questions? All right, thank you, Lori. We appreciate you. Okay, at this time, we'll go ahead and close item 4 on the agenda, and we'll now move on to item 5. Item 5 is the discussion and consider approval of resolution 2023-10, submitting a 2023-2024 TXCDBG application and commit local funds and agree to comply with federal rules and regulations if funded. Okay.
Mayor and council, I'm sorry, Wesley. I should introduce Wesley Traylor. Come on up. He's our grant writer.
Mayor and council and city staff, good to see all of you this evening. My name is Wesley Traylor. The item before you is one of the last steps needed to submit an application to the Texas Department of Agriculture. This application is for water improvements in the Public Housing Authority located at Ferguson and 271. This application is due May 3rd. Something else that the city should be aware of, just to go over some highlights for this application before asking you to sign off on it and submit that thing to the state. This application is for up to $500,000 in grant funds. In order for y'all to compete and get the most points in this competition, the city would need to match that with $75,000. So we've got a $575,000 project, which is pretty good for the water improvements that are needed over there at that Public Housing Authority.
This is old cast iron pipe that actually circles. It's city pipe that serves the area, that circles the Section 8 area, and of course it serves them too. But it's really old ductile iron, so it's a good project, and the $75,000 will again be charged to water utilities, and because of the project it is and where it is, we are very optimistic on this grant.
So would this, if this is approved, would $575,000 be enough to replace all the cast iron, or is that only a portion of it? Can you maybe explain?
It takes care of all the water line in that area. What's needed in that area is about 90% of that water line to be replaced. Upon meeting with the city and working with Public Works as well, it looks like there is a segment on the northern end of Stark that has been replaced in recent years. And so we do get to use that a little bit to our benefit here with the construction budget. The construction budget is $465,000 to replace everything that's remaining.
Is that this amount with the program also, or do you know?
I don't know if that was through a grant program. That may have just been through the city.
It was in-house.
Yeah.
You think our chances are pretty good on getting this?
I do. I think you'll be funded in the first year. This is a 2-year funding cycle, and I think that we're going to be in the money for the first year of funding. these applications typically take about 3 months for the state to review and get back to us with any of their questions, and then get back to us with anything that we need to address and submit to them. But they have transformed into an online portal submittal, so that application review process is supposed to take a shorter amount of time than it has in the past. So we're guessing right now, but not putting money on it, at about 3 months before we know anything after submitting the application.
How much longer can we survive without these updates, and just in case we don't get it?
Well, ductile iron was put in, what, 80 years ago or whatever, Lanny or Dave, you know? Ductile iron's really old, and a lot of times when you look inside, it could have a lot of calcium buildup, and you might have an 8-inch, 10-inch line, and you have just a little hole like this in the middle of it. So you want to replace as much of that as possible. That's why when we found that we had some of this in here, we found it to be a good project to do. So if we don't get it, we'll keep trying, but we will eventually have to change it up. Mm-hmm.
And so, with that said, Ed, have we identified any other areas within the city limits that have similar or exact piping here?
You know, I'm thinking, in talking with Anthony, he's not here, couldn't be here today, that this is probably most of it, if not all of it. There may be some other areas, but this is the most of it. We've done a lot over the years in-house and changing out that ductile iron, and we were surprised, I was surprised to see that we had enough to do a project left in town, because you want to get it out.
All righty. Do we have any further questions? Now we'll open the floor for a motion.
I'll move the approval of resolution 2023-10.
I'll second that.
Have a motion made by Councilman Adams, second by Councilman Chappelle. Madam Secretary, record a vote, please.
Aye.
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 Vote is unanimous. We'll close item 5 on the agenda and now move on to item 6. Item 6 is discussion and consider approval of resolution 2023-11 designating certain individuals as officers in matters pertaining to the 2023-2024 Texas Community Development Block Grant.
Mayor and staff, good to see y'all. It's been a while. This item is just naming certain individuals to act in matters pertaining to the grant if the grant is funded. Right now on that resolution, we've got the city manager, city mayor, finance director, city secretary as authorized persons in all matters pertaining to the grant. Any questions regarding this resolution? We used to not submit this with the application, but this does help speed the grant along faster if this step is already done. So that is why we have it on the agenda right now.
All right, thank you. All right, council, we have any questions, comments? The floor is open for a motion.
I make a motion to approve resolution 2023-11.
I'll second the motion.
Have a motion made by Councilman Chappelle, second by Councilman Dale. Madam Secretary, record a vote, please.
Aye.
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 Mayor and council, I just wanted to also say, I want to thank Wesley Traylor for being here tonight. If you'll remember, this is that grant that we low to moderate income cities can apply for. And we hadn't applied for any here till 2 or 3 years ago when we asked Wesley to come and help us. We did get one. We missed one, but we got one. And we're getting ready to bid it. It has to do with the pretty light fixtures down around the square kind of thing. And we think we're going to get this. And also the person I've asked to maybe head up either the project manager over these CDBG grants, work with Wesley and our engineers is Ricky Harris. He didn't want to do it, but I said that you got to do it. So anyway, no, I appreciate him. I should have recognized him, had him come up and introduce Wesley. I'll do that in the future. But we think these are grants that we can get. Wesley writes them, And if we don't get them, we don't pay him. If we get them, then his fee comes out of the grant. So we ought to be writing these every year. We have a project somewhere in town every year. We're going for it. So really appreciate, I think we're on a good start on this program. Thank you, Wesley. Thank you, Ricky.
All right. Thank you from the council. Thank you. Okay, we had, the vote was unanimous on that item, and we'll go ahead and close that item, which is item 6, and we'll move on now to item 7. Item 7 is discussion and consider approval of resolution 2023-2, changing the name of 2 county roads that have been annexed in the city limits of Mount Pleasant, Texas. John?
Good afternoon, Mayor, council members. This property was actually annexed back in 2011. There were 2 roads, County Road 3207, which is a portion of County Road 3207 from Harts Bluff Road to the edge of the city limits, and County Road 3205, which ties into 3207 and then to the edge of the city limits. Do you have the map you can bring up? No? You should have got a copy of the map in your packet. Okay. So essentially, those 2 roads, it's essentially pasture and cattle land now, so I gave some suggestions as far as grasses and types of cattle, if that's what you want to use. Otherwise, any other name that you come up with, I'll have to verify it's not currently being used in the city.
Hey, could you, I know I saw the email, but that was 2 or 3 days ago. Is it?
If this is a good opportunity, to have people's names that live here, lived up in that area or whatever, it'd be a good opportunity to put names of people you know in there.
And those were just suggestions based on the current use of the land. Now, obviously, like Ed said, if you have any individual that lived in that area or someone that you want to recognize.
And if you want to take it under advisement, we can come back next time, put it on there.
Yeah, we can just do that. It'll be fine with me.
Where'd you get these East Texas grasses suggestions, please, sir?
Just Google. So I went on Google and Googled East Texas grasses, and those were kind of the main ones that came up. So
I was going to say, you might ought to name it Bahia around here.
actually, Bahia was on that list, but I thought like bluegrass sounded prettier than Bahia.
Poor kid will be 18 years old before he can fill his address.
Bahia, the only grass that'll grow on concrete.
Okay. Well, we'll need a recommendation motion to table the item.
I'll make a motion that we table this item to the next meeting.
Okay, we got a motion by Councilman Dale, second by Councilman Adams to table this item until our next meeting. Madam Secretary, record a vote on the site.
Aye.
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 The vote is unanimous to table this item. This item will be tabled until our next council meeting. We've already had item 8, and we'll now move on to item 9, which is public comments. If we have anyone in the public at this time that would like to speak, please come up, state your name and address the council.
Hello, my name's Herschel Kelly. I live at 1201 Silverleaf Street in Mount Pleasant, Texas. I was here for the earlier deal on the zoning. The one thing I would ask about for the city is to consider the area that we talked about earlier being rezoned so that we don't have the same issue coming up in the future to single-family use. I don't know that process, but I think it was pretty unanimous that everyone in that area would like it that way. And to save going back and having this come up and up and up again for the use of the land, I think it would be a really good thing if we can. The other thing is as that develops, even for single-family use, we still have a serious issue on traffic and merging and all that, which I know that might not be the city's issue as far as the roads, because the roads, I think, are all Texas Highway Department roads. But whatever that process is needs to be addressed as we move forward in our plan. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, we have no one else. We'll go ahead and close public comment at this time, unless the council have any questions or comments. All right, we'll go ahead and close item 9 on the agenda, and we'll now move on to item 10, which is our city manager's report. Mr. Thatcher.
Just have a couple items. Want to just kind of remind you, you all have reminded me that we're coming into budget time, and so we'll be getting the sending out the papers to the department directors to. I say sending out. That shows you how old I am. We'll actually ask them to get online and start putting their budget in the computers. But before that, but sometime in May, maybe the middle or end of May, we want to call you all together to do a workshop. It's what we call the pre-budget workshop. We like to talk about how the budget's going. We'll be about 6 or 7 months into the budget at that time. No, about 5, I guess, months into the budget. No, 6 months, 6 or 7 months into the budget. And we'll be able to talk about what our needs are. You'll be able to tell us what you think, what any changes you'd want us to make before we go prepare the budget. And then we'll kind of give you an overview of our financial situation status and maybe an idea where maybe we'll have the preliminary tax roll by then, and we can talk about that. Then we'll prepare the budget, come back sometime in August, and meet with you for a final workshop on the budget. I just want to let you know that's coming up. We want to think about the date. I don't think you like doing it before the council meetings. You probably want to do it on an extra evening, or I should have just asked the question, when would you like to do it? We can do it like on a Tuesday in between the council meetings, or on the 4th or 2nd or something like that. Take a couple hours probably. Very good. All right. Well, so we'll put that out and get that out to you. We also want to remind you that a week from this Thursday, next Thursday, is our Pine Fest out at the park. It starts at 6 o'clock. We're going to have some parking available for y'all. So if you come a little earlier than 6, 5:30 or so, we'll direct you to a spot that you can park and enjoy the festivities there. Other than that, that's all I've got. If you have any questions on anything, I'll be glad to answer.
All right, thank you, Ed. We appreciate that. We'll go ahead and, since we have no questions at this time from Mr. Thatcher, we'll go ahead and close item 10, and we'll move on to our executive session. Pursuant to the Open Meetings Act, Chapter 551, Texas Government Code, the City Council will recess into executive session to discuss the following: deliberations regarding economic development negotiations, Texas Government Code 551.087. At this time, the council is in executive session. All right, the time is 9:12 p.m. The council has reconvened. There's no action taken in executive session at this time. City council is adjourned.